What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Being Only Slightly Smarter Than You Were a Couple years ago. As always, I am your host, Zach Cronin, and today we're going to be talking about Prime James Harden because I've been watching some clips, some highlights, some film of this dude when he was with the Houston Rockets, and he is way better, way more demonic, a I don't want to say significantly more impactful player, but he is just way better than I remember him being. Now, there is, of course, a caveat to this. I was a lot younger during his time in Cleveland, anywhere from like 6 to 10 years younger, which would put me at like 18 to 22, which are prime dumb person years. In my advanced age and like watching this, I feel like it should be in black and white because of how old it is. He just is undeniably one of the most dynamic offensive talents that the NBA has ever seen. I do not know if there will ever be a player who combines that level of playmaking, passing, and efficient shooting relative to how high volume he was. There are, of course, some candidates like Luka Doncic is a guy who puts up Harden like numbers, but he really is such an irreplicable kind of player. I do just want to provide a little bit of statistical backing to this. So, Prime Harden to me is Houston Harden, and more specifically, 2013 to 2020 Houston Harden, which was the season before. That final season was the year before he got traded to Brooklyn, which, by the way, he was still an all star caliber player when that trade happened. Just, of course, the new system that he went to didn't allow him to put up those kinds of numbers. But over those years, averaged 29.6 points and 7.7 assists. The only player to do that over that stretch. Rush didn't do it. LeBron didn't do it. To go along with that, he was, of course, the MVP winner back in 2017. 18 was an MVP finalist, 5 times, 7 All NBA selections. What is it? 8 All Star selections. Just an incredible stretch of basketball. It just a remarkable, a spectacular, an extraordinary stretch of basketball. Not only like these numbers, the raw numbers, the individual moments. I think of the 60-point triple double he had against the Orlando Magic, which was the game that I was gonna react to and analyze, but I decided against that. I'll go on to that a little bit later. There was that one stretch. I think it was in 2017 when he averaged 40 points for like 2 straight weeks or whatever it was. Just uncanny, almost unreplicated scoring and playmaking output over that time. Of course, a lot of Harden's success is predicated on how skilled he was as a player. There was no system in which he wouldn't have succeeded, but the Rockets made it a point to surround him with shooters and Clint Capella, which of course that's where the NBA was trending at that point. But Harden was one of the guys who best maximized it, especially once Clint Capella started to turn into a very, very good center. Capella and Harden were absolutely lethal in the pick and roll. Capella has great mobility, great athleticism. He had fantastic hands as well, and you'll see this in some of the clips that we look at. But then, of course, you surround him with Trevor Ariza. You surround him with Gerald Green, with Eric Gordon, with Luke Mbamute. Like, the only reason that Harden doesn't have a championship to his name is because he unfortunately played in the same conference as the Golden State Warriors. There are, of course, caveats to that, like Houston missing 27 straight threes in that game 6 or game 7, whatever it was against the Warriors. But make no mistake about it, Harden would have put up these remarkable statistical anomalies, I'm going to call them, regardless of if he was playing like exclusively isometric or isolation basketball. But credit to Houston and credit to the ownership and the coaching staff for recognizing the kind of talent that this guy had and filling him with the appropriate role players. And of course, like, you can't take this stuff for granted because towards the end of that tenure, after the Rockets transferred ownership, there was no urgency to replicate the teams of 2016, 2017, and 2018, which was when the Rockets were objectively one of the best teams in the conference and a legitimate championship contender. Another thing that's worth noting is Harden's obvious efficiency in the pick and roll. And just obviously a disclaimer here, there are some plays that we're going to see where you can't analyze it. You can't give any feedback because it's just one of the greatest players of all time doing things that only the greatest players of all time can do. But we're not going to key on the game against the Orlando Magic that I talked about because I didn't think that was appropriate just because of the flow of that game. Obviously, a 60-point triple double is worth looking at in some degree, but those kinds of performances happen against shit defense, and the Orlando Magic in that game played some remarkably shitty defense, as did the Houston Rockets also. Like, that was a single digit win for Houston. It was neck and neck throughout the entirety of that game. There really wasn't anything that Orlando was trying to do to slow down Harden. They also didn't have the personnel to be an elite team or even like a serviceable team against James Harden. I think that season they were 18th in defensive rating and 21st in points per game allowed. We're going to look at the 45-point triple-double that Harden had against Golden State back in January of 2019. That is, of course, the Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Golden State Warriors. They weren't That squad in particular wasn't as elite as some of the ones that had came before it, but you're still looking at a very good defensive team. They were 13th in defensive efficiency. Again, not great, but better. And obviously, they also have the personnel to match up against someone like James Harden. Again, you have Draymond Green, you have Kevin Durant, you have pre-injury Klay Thompson, Andre Iguodala. Like, that is just a better matchup for Golden State. Now, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get into it. One thing that I noticed, like off the bat with Orlando, when Harden was shredding them, is that there was no intensity attacking him off of dribble handoffs or off of ball screens. When you have a dominant player like this, you have to attack them in the pick and roll. You have to blitz them. You have to throw bodies at them. You have to throw off their rhythm. In that game, Harden was getting into the paint basically at will, and he had 2 feet in the paint before there was anyone close to him on defense for Orlando. Right away, you can see Kevin Durant, and obviously Kevin Durant doesn't have to sell out as much because he does have these physical traits, but he's at least in a position to defend James Harden, and he's not letting him penetrate. There is, of course, the the philosophical decision of whether to allow James Harden to beat you by himself or allow everyone else to beat you. Watching that game against Orlando, I think they tried to let Harden beat them, but they were not good enough defensively to neutralize anybody else. If you're going to allow Harden to beat you, just let him well, obviously don't just let him walk into the basket. That's a little too literal, but don't help off shooters. If you're in the pick and roll, you're playing 2-on-2, and the 3 other defenders are glued to Eric Gordon, PJ Tucker, whomever it may be. Obviously, Golden State has a lot more versatility in this regard, but you'll see just like from the jump, the defensive intensity is higher. I think some of that comes with these teams just having history with one another, them being conference rivals, them being 2 of the premier teams in the conference or in the NBA at the time, and also this being a nationally televised game. Good eyes. As you can see, when Houston, God, I wish the fucking the camera panned out a little more. There's nobody on the back side right here. We'll slow it down a little bit just so you guys can see. There's no one on the back line right here. Everyone is up, potentially guarding against the screen that Gerald Green can come off of. The only potential help defender is over here in the corner, and he's out of the play. I don't recall who it was, but shout out to Gerald Green for recognizing this and taking what the defense is giving him. Sean Livingston cheats a little bit to get over this Austin Rivers screen, and you've got a great athlete. Just throw it up. Sean Livingston is not tipping that ball. It's just really great fluid offense, reading what the defense is playing and responding accordingly. Here we have a similar play, but Harden just takes it because it's one-on-one. At that point, the closest guy is Sean Livingston. He's probably not going to help off the corner because you'll take your chances here. You give up a layup for Harden, great, as opposed to giving up three to probably PJ Tucker. I would think that is. Also, you can't see it. The score right now is 49-35, Golden State, with about 7.5 to go in the second quarter. I'll minimize it for you guys so you can see. Because time and score also dictates a lot of how defense plays. When you have a significant lead like this, you'll allow twos because you can trade baskets when you're up 14. You don't want to allow the Rockets to hit three threes in a row because next thing you know, that 14-point lead is down to 5. And all it takes is 3 possessions. Harden gets the little overplay on the left, crosses back, good, strong finish. One thing I've noticed about James Harden is that I think his strength might be a little underappreciated because when he drives, he doesn't get particularly low on his dribbles, especially when you watch a guy like Devin Booker or Jason Tatum. Like, these guys are damn near on the floor sometimes. But Harden doesn't do that because guys just bounce right off of him. And it's not something that's talked about because he isn't the biggest guy, nor is he the most athletic. Like LeBron, obviously, we know about how strong he is because he's been dunking from the dotted line on the he's been dunking from the dotted line inside the paint for fucking 20 years now. But Harden, guys just bounce off of him. And here, once again, penetrating. Good little drop to Capella. The beauty of just getting into the teeth of the defense. They're also doing this with 18 seconds on the shot clock. The offense nor the defense here isn't even set. Harden is 2 feet in the paint, and Austin Rivers has yet to plant himself in the corner. So you trigger the help from Kevin Durant. Obviously, you're not going to shoot a floater over KD because he's going to send that shit. He's going to send that shit back to San Francisco. So you just drop it off to Capella. So the Rockets are about to go in semi-transition here. Harden is seeing the floor, but he sees Capella at half court. Once Capella gets by Livingston and KD, it's a free basket. Durant is not looking at him. Sean Livingston is not looking at him. There has been no communication by anybody seemingly about Clint Capella, and Capella knows. Once he sees that no one is paying attention to him, once he sees that these two nearest defenders close on Harden, he knows that there's nothing that the defense can do. He's the biggest guy on the court right now as well, except for Kevon Looney, who was in the backcourt. But you can see, I don't know, I forget who this is, but just like the look on his face, he's a little exasperated because there was no communication there. And if we'll watch this back in real time just so we can get the full effect of it. Like, this happens in 3 seconds. Capella filling the lane hard. This is what you want your big to do. When he gets ahead of the defense, throw it. And this is also good because it's easy baskets that don't take a lot of time off the clock. Another just beautiful step back. The dribbling, it's so smooth. It's so picturesque. The step back is quick and quick enough to where Andre Iguodala is not able to close out. Beautiful orchestration of the pick and roll here. This is not something that was happening consistently in that game against the Magic. So Capella coming up to set the screen. Harden rejects it, kind of. I think he might have been, unless it was just like a ghost screen. I'm not so sure if Harden misread it or whatever it was. But either way, Jordan Bell is coming up to contest. Now, there's a lot of space. That's the thing with the high pick and roll is there's a lot of space at the top of the three-point line for your ball handler to dribble through. He splits the defense. Jordan Bell is not in a position to guard, gets his hips swung around. Harden does fumble this dribble a little bit. If he doesn't, I think it's a clean 1-2 into a floater or something like that. But Draymond Green, elite defender, he knows he has to come over and stop the 2. I don't know if that was maybe an adjustment that they made at halftime because he's leaving PJ Tucker wide open. I think that they are at this point playing a little more conservatively and now changing their coverage to prevent Harden from getting in a rhythm. Because if Harden gets in a rhythm, it's over for them. They may or may not be able to maintain this lead if that's the case. It's still, they're up 15, by the way, at the start of the third quarter. Just a good pass into PJ Tucker. Steph, there, there's really nothing for him to do here. If he is going to rotate, it's going to be earlier. So he takes away this pass to PJ Tucker, take away the closest pass, and then you re-scramble out to Austin Rivers. But again, Harden is already into the paint at this point, and it's not enough time for Golden State to recover. Straight up defensive breakdown. Two guys get stuck on the ball. There's nobody, no one is even close to Clint Capella. Great pass by Harden. And you see Steph here at the end doing like the mouth motion. I can't read his lips, but I'm assuming this was a breakdown in coverage and there was no communication. Of course, Jordan Bell is a young player at this point, still getting adjusted to the NBA, if I recall correctly. And like, they're just like looking at everyone's body language. I don't think anyone was in the right position to defend that. You're James Harden. You're running this fast break, semi transition, whatever you want to call it. You see three Warriors in front of you. It is you plus your three teammates. This is an easy read. It's a kick to Austin Rivers on the wing because the Warriors are not set up and you don't have to force yourself into the paint at this point. That's the beauty of modern basketball. Yeah, you have numbers, but just because you have numbers doesn't mean that you have to force a layup by running into three very good defenders. Like, these are probably the three best defenders on the Warriors at this point: Draymond, KD, and Clay. Also, a great job by Austin Rivers running to the right spot. And these are simple things. These are simple concepts. These are fundamentals that every young basketball player can learn from. Body language is not looking too great. Oh boy. Okay, yeah. So despite the shit pass, rejects the screen. Thompson overplays. That's why Harden rejects this screen because Thompson overplays it. Like he's already gonna fight over. And that's not necessarily a bad decision by Klay Thompson because he's got people around to help. He's got Jordan Bell, who's working with him on the screen. He's got Kevin Durant in the corner. He's got Andre Iguodala, who's going to step up and take away this drive. Again, the only issue and why he goes to the lob is Capella has the size advantage. And the Warriors almost broke up that play. By the way, the score, end of the 3 minutes left in the third quarter, 90-79 Golden State. So there really hasn't been any significant momentum gained by Houston to this point. This is just abusing the mismatch. Unfortunately, Steph Curry is not in a position to have to guard James Harden, and I'm sure he knows this because he has been the offensive player doing what James Harden has done to him to other guys. So Curry's applying pressure at the top. He's playing really tight defense. He also just does not have the strength to absorb any of these bumps that Harden gives. However, he gets lost on this crossover. Like that, once that little shimmy happens, Harden knows he can take it. And the worst part is that Steph is allowing him to take his dominant hand, but it's also how James Harden set up the dribble move. Now, Steph does recover a little bit. Great stop, great snatchback, and there's nobody around to help. Clay is not going to allow this three-pointer to come open, and Harden, I don't think he's going to kick it to, who is this, James Ennis, I think it is. And even if he misses this shot, Capella is in good position to potentially grab an offensive rebound. Granted, there are three Warriors in the paint, but being the biggest guy on the court, it'll work to your benefit sometimes. You can already see the difference in defensive ability between Clay and Steph. Obviously, this is nothing new, but Clay keeps Harden in front of him. He's got good defensive position. They're similar in terms of height, and I mean like both of them sinking down in their stances because, as we know, low man wins. Clay doesn't sell out too hard on either of these dribble moves. He keeps his hands also away from Harden because the last thing you want to do is reach, and the other thing you don't want to do is get caught up in his gather on a three. This is just elite shot making. This is elite shot making by James Harden, and it's also good awareness by him as I'm yapping over this good read in transition. It's also good awareness by him as well. End of the third quarter, he needs to find a rhythm going into the fourth if Houston has a chance to win this game. Good block by Gerald Green here. Again, semi-transition. We have the similar thing that happened with Clint Capella, except now it's going to be with James Ennis. Nobody is aware of Ennis. No one is matched up on him. And the worst part is nobody is seemingly communicating that to the defense. Quinn Cook is responsible for this call out. He has to make it known that Ennis has a free line to the basket. It's not Thompson. Klay Thompson has no idea. KD has no idea. Dre is running out to the corner. It's an easy pass. And it also doesn't help that Iguodala is out of the play. Like that is, we can't overlook that. They're playing 4-on-5. They're playing 5-on-4. Pardon me, but this is if you're a young defender, please communicate these things to your teammates. They have to know, especially when you are going up against an elite player. Like this is too easy. This is pitch and catch. Especially now, 60 seconds left in the third quarter, and they're cutting it to a single digit deficit. It's not about being fast, boys and girls. It is about being fast in when you change direction. Harden, as we know, is not the fastest. He's not the most explosive ball handler. But going from 0 to 100 is just as effective as going from 100 to 110, right? John Wall, De'Aaron Fox, guys who are super quick going from baseline to baseline are just as difficult to guard as James Harden is. And it further demonstrates you don't have to be super athletic. Like Klay Thompson gets back into position. Harden is trotting, boom, super low, down by his ankles, right into his shooting pocket. This is picturesque ball handling, exploiting mismatches. They switch onto this, pulls Kevon Looney away from the basket. Clint Capella gets behind the defense. There's no one around to help protect the rim. Just throw it up to your big, allow him to go up and get it. Soft hands, great leaping, and now it's a 1-point game. This is good basketball. This is a good. I think this is an okay after timeout play. So you have Austin Rivers inbounding, point guard, good passer, okay decision maker. PJ Tucker is out of the play, pulling Kevin Durant away from the basket. Gerald Green, he's also probably going to be out of the play. There's only 2.5 seconds left on the shot clock. You set up Harden to screen. Your first option is Capella on the dive, or potentially the lob. That's if there's a miscommunication by Kevon Looney and Klay Thompson. You're open for an easy 2. If not, you have Harden just pop out and hit a 1 dribble pull up or a 1 dribble step back. Pardon me. Good use of personnel, quality out of bounds play. And then we go back to what Houston normally does. This is a marvelous pass. This is a marvelous catch. I mean, perfect placement. And Clint Capella, bro, it is not easy to be 7 feet tall and catch passes around your ankles or your shins. It requires remarkable coordination. You just have to be a very agile sender to be able to pull in these types of passes. And it's not a skill set that every center is accustomed to practicing. It's not something that has always been necessary as a big, but nowadays with the pick and roll being more and more integral to so many teams and there are so many elite guards who can deliver these kinds of passes, your centers, they have to be able to catch. Like, they have to have as reliable hands as spot up shooters nowadays. Boom, rebound, leaking out. Great awareness by Capella. This is also, I believe, that there was most likely a switch that occurred at the top of the key, because why else would Capella be up there? He was guarding KD, it seems. Daniel House Jr. grabs the rebound, immediately shuffles it to James Harden. This is why it is integral to get the ball to your guard as quickly as possible, so that way they can capitalize on things like this. Unfortunately, I don't know who took this shot, but uh, it's hard to say. Regardless, one of these two guys, either Steph or KD, has to be getting back unless they took that shot. This is inexcusable by Golden State to not account for Clint Capella. Harden sees this, he calls for it, delivers a fantastic pass, absolutely spectacular feed, and that could have gone to Capella in stride if Daniel House had given the ball up faster. No disrespect to him, but I mean, also, like, that's not necessarily a negative thing either. It's not like he held the ball for too long. It's just one of those things where you look at in the film room and you're like, yeah, you could have done this like a little faster. Harden also could have been more assertive in him calling for the ball. There really wasn't much urgency on either end, on either of their parts, and I think that they probably just didn't recognize the mismatch. But regardless, you see it at some point and you get an and one. 3-point game right here. Oof. That little hang dribble is so lethal. Like what I said before about the back foot, as an offensive player, as an offensive player trying to build your game, this is something you watch. As a defensive player, you definitely do not watch any other part of the player except for their chest. Basketball 101. Do not look at a player's eyes. Do not look at their hips. Focus on their chest, and you're less likely to get beat. Like I was saying before, if you sell out on this and it's not a step back, he can in and out go right by you. Perhaps Kevin Durant should have done that, knowing time and score, 45 seconds left, 119, 116. Houston, you don't want to give up a three in this scenario. Obviously, it's not the end of the game. There is still time, but you would ideally want to run Harden off of the 3-point line. But this hang dribble is just so perfect. He sells it enough to make KD back up, and we'll pause it right here. Although KD is still in good defensive position with his arm extended, but out of the way of any potential gather, this is more than enough space for a guy like Harden. And then he lands so perfectly on his right foot. All you have to do, if your right foot, this is as a left-handed player, but if your right foot is in position on your step back, you just slide the left a little bit and it'll be in rhythm for you. It's all about just repetition at that point, how many times you practice that type of shot. But that's why Harden was so effective at it. This was his move. This was his game breaker. This was the thing that he popularized. I mean this with the utmost respect. James Harden really was a fucking freak on the basketball court. Going back like 5, 6, 7 years and just seeing the elite talent again with a fresh pair of eyes and a better understanding of basketball, especially modern basketball, it really is like cinema watching him play. Are we at the end of the video already? Holy shit, we are. Dagger. Dagger. This is just, I'm better than you, and we all know it. Klay Thompson and Draymond Green are the two defenders here. They're doing, look at the denial efforts by KD and Dre. This is cinema in and of itself. I think what allows Golden State to get beat here, the very minutia of playing defense, is Klay is not square in his stance. So they call the switch. Excellent job communicating this as well. Look at how Clay opens up his hips on Harden's initial dribble. As we know, if you're able to get the defender to commit to one way and you cross back over to the other side, you're going to gain that step advantage. Just because the defender, I don't care who it is, they are not quick enough to turn their body around 180 degrees while you're already going the opposite direction. So Clay gets beat on this crossover, but still he recovers pretty well. And this is just incredible shot making. That's really all it is. You can run this play the same exact way 100 times, and Harden will not make this shot probably more than 90% of the, or probably more than 10% of the time. It is a statistical anomaly that he made a 32-foot three at the end of the game while in double coverage. Not only the end of the game, but the end of overtime. So he has 5 more minutes of fatigue on his body. Remarkable. Just absolutely preposterous shot making on this final possession. And that's really it. That's really all I have to say about Prime James Harden. I think that this game perfectly encapsulated everything that 6-7 year stretch was all about for him. And it's a reminder of, oh yeah, he can do that from time to time, because even now in his older age, obviously he's not putting up the same numbers that he was, a couple years ago, averaging 37 points or 36, whatever it was, to 16 last season. That's just a case of him aging. But we have seen performances like this. We have seen flashes of prime Harden. We have seen instances where Houston Harden comes out for the Clippers or for Brooklyn when he played there, and it was just it's cinema. It's spectacular. It's spectacular basketball, and it's also basketball that people can learn from, which I think is even better because yeah, you watch professional sports and sometimes they just make plays because they're freaks, they're statistical outliers, they're genetic outliers, but um there's still a fundamental reason why these plays are able to be made in the first place, because regardless of all of the ridiculous ankle breakers, the posters, whatever it may be, a large piece of succeeding as a basketball player, as a professional basketball player, wherever it may be, if it's in Portugal, if it's in China, if it's in the NBA, is taking what the defense gives you and making the simple play. Making the simple play never goes out of style. It never gets old. It never becomes antiquated. The simple play may change as new generations come into the league, but if you're able to understand how the modern or how the contemporary game is played and you can settle in, you can carve out a career for yourself. You can carve out a successful career for yourself where you don't have to be James Harden. You don't have to be Houston Harden. You can be sixth man James Harden and just stay that and contribute to winning basketball. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this video out. Thank you guys so very much for coming to hang out with me today. As always, everything I'm associated with is down in the description box below: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a like on this video. Drop a comment as well. It really helps out with the algorithm. If you do any of those three things, you will become my new favorite person. And with that, I will see y'all in the next one.